Well, before we pressed go on this and started chatting, you mentioned about like the right tool for the job. And
Right.
if you're at Skookumchucks and there's a lot of water, or Okasolo and there's a lot of water, you're not actually
Right.
sea kayaking or Greenland kayaking. You're actually whitewater kayaking at that point in time.
Yeah.
In
Essentially,
which case,
yeah.
a Euro blade that is a derivative of a whitewater kayak blade, really, that makes lots and lots and lots of sense. But
Absolutely.
equally, if you're on some journey, like the strain of a Euro blade on your joints and your muscles can be hectic, in which case a Greenland paddle would be more suitable or more sensible. The problem is we don't have a garage we can tow behind us with loads of different paddles.
Right. And that's where breakdown paddles, because you're starting to find more sea kayakers, if they're dominantly using a Euro blade, they'll likely have a Greenland breakdown paddle on their back deck, just so that they can switch those blades up on an expedition or whatever they're doing, because they're using slightly different muscle group, right? And like you said, with a Greenland paddle, it's putting a little bit less strain on you. You can likely paddle for a longer time with a Greenland paddle than you could with a Euro blade before you're going to start to really get sore, especially if your technique's not perfect, right? But absolutely different tools meant for different things. Not to say that I'm not going to grab a Greenland pallet and challenge myself to do something a Euro blade paddler's doing, because that's just me. But that's not necessarily me. That doesn't necessarily mean it's the right tool for the job. It just means that I'm really challenging myself. I think what we were talking about before is you asked me why the Greenland paddle? Why? What's the deal? And for me, because it's got so much less catch and it's a little bit more challenging in those bigger conditions, I find that I really have to put a lot more focus on myself as the paddler and the kayak. So there's that whole body boat blade kind of combo that's going on. And if you take one of those pieces away, you're going to have to start really focusing on the others. It's like if you go blind, all of your other senses become a little bit more aware, and you have to really start to focus on those other senses and to get yourself back. So with the Greenland paddle, it's really like, I really have to focus on my boat control. I really got to thread that needle if I'm going through an eddy line to get to the front. I have to, otherwise I'm just getting pushed off. So I feel like it enhances the skill to a little bit. It makes me think a little bit more in depth about what I'm doing. And in theory, I mean, that's going to make you a better paddler faster, because you're taking away a piece. But the thing is like I said, I'm not just using a Greenland paddle. I'm very much the guy that's grabbing one or the other, just depending. I want to know the differences between the two. I want to be able to discover that for myself so that I can explain that to my students, because they are different tools, and, one's not better than the other. They're meant for two different things. So I just think that, I just feel that they're two different tools for two different things. There's no reason to dog one or the other. They're both great tools, and they're both going to help you. So
I think one of the things I often consider is that the increase of hardness of somebody's environment. If I've got a client with a Greenland paddle and that's the thing they want to use, I'm like, cool, we could use that, but I want to guide them to do like a 5% increase in hardness from where they're competent to just 5% more. Because I'm very conscious that you can't muscle your way out of a problem with a Greenland paddle. Like either you make it work or you pretty much don't. Like you were saying about Skookumchuck, 6.5 minutes sat there, and no matter what you did,
I wasn't going anywhere. I had to wait for that max to kind of start to Of course, I jumped out right at max, so it's just a big bloody foam pile. But I mean, we're talking. I had been paddling for 2 years at that point. This is that whole like naive paddler, like going over the limit. Like I was pushing myself and putting myself into situations. You know what? I learned real quick. It took that 6.5 minutes taught me that that's not the right tool. Right? So
how long 6.5 minutes is until you've been sat on a broken wave for 6.5 minutes?
It's a long time.
It's exhausting.
I mean, that video, if you want to watch that video, it's on YouTube. I mean, literally, I'm a new paddler. I'm out there. I think Reg Lake is the guy that actually filmed it. And you just listen to his comments all the way through. He's like, holy shit, how does he manage to be out there that long? All it was for me is I had to find the balance point on that kayak. Like, it was critical for me, you know? There's a lot of times when I was watching guys in the foam pile, they're just leaning so heavy into that foam pile. It just looked like so much goddamn work. And while I was out there, I started to realize, wow, there's this flat spot underneath me. If I just sit right here, I don't even need to use my paddle, you know? So it's like 4 minutes into me sitting in a foam pile, and I'm like lifting my hands up in the air, just balancing. Just, what else am I going to do? I'm stuck out there. You know? So there's a lot to learn when you put yourself into bad situations like that. I'm not suggesting everybody do it, but that was my progression. It's always been my progression. I always just push until I figure it out. So